Yeah, so we've gone live, and Christina and I are just figuring things out with our banners,
Good morning, everybody.
because we're banner buddies.
That's right, we are.
That's right. We've got gigantic banners.
There's important things in this world, and that's one of them, being banner buddies. And mine is ginormous, so I'm going to be working on getting a new banner for this kind of scenario.
It only took us this long to figure out, how about a better banner? And,
Oh, yeah, that's what life's all about, learning as we go.
That's good. And we're learning about LinkedIn Live. I'm not 100% proficient at it yet, but you and I can pretend. Pardon?
Is this taping too? Is this recording?
Yeah, like apparently it's live, as if it's a live TV show. Nice. And then it records and then consistently shows up on my feed, which then we can move to your feed. That's how I assume it works. I still haven't figured out who sees this live. Whoa, hey, Connie's joining us. Can you see Connie in the chat? Do you see Connie?
No, I do not. Hello, Connie.
Is there a chat box that you can see?
Yeah, I have a chat box, but I don't have.
It should say Connie Jacat.
Oh, there we go.
Woo-hoo! Power duo. Do you see that?
I do now, yes. I have to switch my settings. Got it.
And then you can send her a comment below.
Okay.
It says post a comment. We can woohoo back to Connie. Connie, you are Connie's the second most amazing person I know. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Nice to have you with us this morning.
And how could you? No LinkedIn Live is complete without the post-birthday girl.
That's right. Happy.
Jeanette Martin. And Tanya Hewitt is here. She finally found it. Tanya Hewitt, the most prolific speaker on Zoom. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Tanya, Jeanette, and Connie.
Yes.
And thank you, the amazing Christina Henderson. Now we're going to get serious here.
Yeah.
On LinkedIn Live, hosted by some company that goes by the name of StreamYard. And apparently StreamYard and LinkedIn have come together to form a partnership of sorts that allows us to do this. And how excited we are today, or how excited I am. Robert Mandelson, the creator and facilitator of powerful play experiences, positive workplace mental health for teams, and my good friend Peggy. No, Peggy rocks the house. She might even be the house. She rocks the house. How excited I am. I really am to create a meaningful conversation with one of Alberta's leading experts in the area of peer support.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And Christina Henderson is here with us today. And your business, you founded a business. How long ago?
Last spring, actually, is when I started putting things together. And within the last couple of months, I've started really getting it up and going. So, Peerspectives Consulting. And that is not a typo. It is Peerspectives Consulting.
we've got a message from Andrew Richardson. He says he may check in. He says, I will take time to watch today. Pretty much overwhelmed the last bit, but he's going to come back and check us out later on.
Great.
Thank you, Andrew. You and I need to reconnect. Back to Christina, Perspective Consulting. So what's the story behind the name?
So with peer support, in my experience, it helps give you perspective on your life, on where you've been, where you are, where you're going. So I use that as a play on words between peer support and perspective to come up with Perspective Consulting. And it's near and dear to my heart, because I think it's something that is needed, as we said in our intro, and that it's something that's needed now, I think, more than ever.
But tell me about peer support. I'm a little bit naive on the subject matter of peer support, and in large part, that's why I wanted to have us come together today, because I might not be the only one out there who is unfamiliar with the term peer support, but I've seen it around and I've read about it for years now. So what is peer support?
Well, I'm glad that you asked the question, because I have to say that's one of the first things that I'm asked by anybody is, what is peer support? What does that mean? Is that just being friends with somebody? So let's start with CMHA, so the Canadian Mental Health Association. Their formal, if you like, definition of peer support is lived experience is the cornerstone, of peer support. It is a supportive relationship between people who have a lived experience in common. So the difference between peer support and a friendship is peer support is very targeted. So the people that are in that connective relationship are there as one is supporting the other, as opposed to in a friendship, you have it both ways. In peer support, one is supporting the other and is very strategic. So for example, we come at it with our own lived experience. Whatever that person is looking for support, whether they're a caregiver, whether they're a youth looking for some support, whatever it happens to be, I will only share the pieces of my lived experience that are relevant to support that person, if that makes sense. As opposed to if I'm sitting down with you, Robert, and you and I are friends and we're having a conversation and we're going to go back and forth on different experiences and different things that maybe we just want to talk about as friends, right? Peer support is more targeted. It's a professional atmosphere. It is non-judgmental. Peer support is amazing because you can talk with other people that have a lived experience that connects with your lived experience, where there's no judgment and the emotion is taken out of it.
Now, do both people or peer support can come in the form of one-to-one? Can it come in the form of one-to-many?
Absolutely. Yep. You can do a one-to-one. Absolutely. You can do a small group. So maybe it's 4 people and the facilitator, which would be me. And you can do a large group. You can do where I would present at a whole conference, for example, on what peer support is and how it can be used to help support you in any way. It can be emotional support. It can be just a peer-to-peer, right? So there's social support, right? Making those social connections. So it can come in different forms, or it can be a combination of all of them, right?
If you're joining us here today live, feel free to post comments. Feel free to bring questions forward to Christina. We're here for the next 20 minutes to a half hour maximum. I'm watching the clock, and we want to ensure that everybody's comments and questions are put forward to Christina. She's an incredible resource in the area of peer support, one of Alberta's leading experts in the area of peer support. My next question, just from clarification, do all the individuals involved in the peer support relationship it sounds like they need to have a shared life experience.
Yes, yes. But I want to clarify that. A shared life experience doesn't mean that I have gone through exactly what you went through.
Okay.
So, for example, peer support you will often see in relationships with people that are going through themselves or are supporting someone with a mental health and or addiction concern. That's the most common area that you will see it in. From my experience, I have experience with both supporting someone with an addiction. I have experience supporting a loved one with mental health challenges, and I also have experience supporting a loved one with a physical disability.
So
So
would that mean that you too have that lived experience?
yes, yes. So whereas, for example, my lived experience with someone with a physical disability, supporting that, is my son Taylor, who has cerebral palsy.
Okay.
Now, I might speak with another, let's say, another parent, right, who would classify as a caregiver, right? I might speak with another parent who's going through where their child is in hospital and they have either they're recovering from a surgery or they have a condition, right, that they're helping support that loved one with. Doesn't have to be cerebral palsy, but the general experience is the same. So I can empathize with that person,
Okay.
right? There's empathy there. It's an empathetic relationship. And I want to mention too that it's a strengths-based relationship as well. Okay, that's really important. It's strengths-based. So when I'm working with somebody, quite often, certainly initially, the person or the group that I am working with, they're coming in and they maybe have some self-sabotage behavior, right? Like, I'm doing everything I can and it's not good enough. I don't like, they're feeling down. They maybe are feeling depressed, right? That kind of thing. So part of my job as a peer support worker is to look at what they bring to the table and pull out those strengths. So
Mm.
what is strong as opposed to what is wrong? Okay. And that's really important with peer support. So it's not sitting and woe is me. It's a targeted support to pull out those strengths. You matter. Exactly. Exactly.
That's
Right?
what I heard in what you just said.
Yeah,
By
absolutely.
pulling out the strengths, you matter, your strengths matter, and together, our own experience, our own life experiences. I'm here to support you. I'm here to listen. I'm here.
100%. 100%. And there's no judgment because quite often when we're going through life experiences, and you don't have to go through something catastrophic to need peer support either. All right.
Okay.
It can be, that maybe you're dealing with some anxiety at this point in your life because of something that's occurred to you, but it doesn't have to be catastrophic to have happened to you.
Let's
Okay.
let's politely interrupt.
Yeah.
Politely interrupt.
Yeah.
Tanya Hewitt with Beyond. I went blank here. I know the name of Tanya's business, and for a second I went blank here. Tanya Hewitt has a question, and Tanya
Yeah.
Hewitt asks, what happens if one individual believes their experience is more authentic than others, feeling that they have more to offer, their contribution is more important? And that's Tanya's question. And our second question, we'll get back to Tanya's second
Sure.
question in a moment. Peggy asks, how is peer support different from mentoring? So which question would you like to address first?
I'll start with Tanya's. They're great questions, by the way. So thank you for putting those in the chat. So what happens if one individual believes their experience is more authentic than others? So part of what we do as peer support is we set up those boundaries and those expectations right at the very beginning before we get into any conversations, right? So one of those boundaries or expectations is that whatever you bring to your table is your story. You own it. It's your authentic space. Right? So even if you feel that your experience is maybe more authentic whatever that might mean or look like to you, because that can differ. That's fine, but it doesn't have a place to override what other people are sharing,
Yes.
right? So when I'm working with a group of people, that's the very first thing that I do is I set out those boundaries and expectations. So you're in a safe place when you are sharing. It is non-judgmental, and no one here is better or worse or whatever than anybody else. We're all bringing our experiences. Some people can come to a drop-in group that I might hold, and in that drop-in group, they don't share at all. They don't want to say a word, and that's okay. That's their space that they're in. Other people, sometimes, for lack of a better way to put it, you have to rein in a little bit, me included, because when I get going, you know, you have to rein it in a little bit. But it's making sure you set up those expectations and those boundaries before you even start the work.
So does that mean that peer support is different from mentoring? Asks Peggy.
I would say there's a lot of overlapping with mentoring. I would say where it differs goes back to the lived experience piece. My own experience with mentorship, and I have been a mentor. I've been a mentor with the Alberta Association of Peer Support. And my experience with mentoring is to have an authentic relationship with mentoring. And again, I'm only speaking from my experience. You have to have that lived experience piece that you can add to it. Does that mean there aren't amazing mentors out there? No, not at all. But in regards to peer support, that lived experience is at the core of it.
Okay. And I can see the difference. Having worked with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Edmonton many years ago in a mentoring program where we matched adult volunteers to children and youth who required the support of a positive adult role model.
Yes.
But it wasn't about the experience.
Yes.
The experience wasn't the piece that brought the two of them together.
I would say that would be the one point that would differ between
them. One significant point.
Yeah.
Tanya asks, do peer support communities spontaneously combine, or are they created?
What do you mean by spontaneously combine? Like they just happen?
Yeah, informally. Might they start informally, or they very intentionally come together in a formal context?
I would say with the work that I do, it's very intentional. That is very intentional. That my business, for example, I specifically look at youth and caregivers. Those are my two niches. So for me, it's very intentional what I bring to the table and what I'm asking others who come to work with me, what they bring.
In a sense, you're in the business, the business of peer support consulting and facilitation.
Absolutely.
And that's the distinction between do peer support communities spontaneously combine, or are they created? We're going to get back to Peggy's comment in a moment. Tanya continues by saying, so when families learn of a diagnosis of their child, they will seek out others with that same diagnosis. We'll get to your question, Peggy, for sure. Any comment, Christina?
Yeah. And, Tanya, I thank you for that question and for also bringing that point up, because there's two things that I want to say about that. First of all, yes, you would seek out other people because you want somebody who's experienced it. There is a difference. It's important to also know, I'll just back up for a second. It's important to also know that a peer support worker, we're not psychiatrists, we're not counselors. So that's important to know. You won't come and work with me and I will not be giving any form of diagnosis. Okay, so that's important for you to know. The other piece with the diagnosis is, yes, absolutely. As a parent with two special needs children, that's what I would do. I would seek out other parents who have had that lived experience and know where we're coming from. However, a diagnosis, I always want to be really careful with diagnosis. In my world, a diagnosis will get you the support that you need. And that's why we need those diagnoses. That's why they're so important. Because some people, and I'm an educator as well, I've been in education for 18 years. So I've worked with many parents who don't even want to get their child assessed because they don't want a label put on them. And I get that 100%. What I always say to them is the diagnosis is important because I can then get you the supports that you need, which I can't if I don't have that diagnosis. However, that diagnosis should never define the person with the diagnosis.
And again, you're reinforcing the point that I raised a minute ago. And correct me if I'm wrong. You're in the business of peer support. It needs to be looked at as a full-fledged profession.
Yes.
Very definite methodologies in the way that you work with individuals and groups. Yes. And Peggy has said here, she has the lived experience in areas where she mentors. And she also says, in my experience, people with lived experience make the best mentors. But it sounds like, just to build on Peggy's point, is we're coming together because we've defined what that specific lived experience is and how peer support as a helping profession can apply to those individuals.
Yes, exactly. So, and it can be broad for that experience, and it can be narrowed right down. So for example, Robert, you introduced me to somebody on LinkedIn just the other day who's also another peer support worker, has lived experience, and she's specifically looking at eating disorders because that is her lived experience. That's awesome, right? Awesome. For me, as I said, my lived experience is with caregivers and with youth. Right? So just because you're a peer support worker doesn't mean that you have all the lived experience to help anybody out there. Do you know what I mean? So I've worked with anxiety and depression and physical disabilities and caregivers. That's another piece is I work with caregivers, but a lot of people don't identify themselves as a caregiver even when they are.
Okay, so let's we have 15 minutes, so let's leap into that. The title of our session today, and thank you, Tanya, and thank you, Peggy.
Yes.
For kickstarting this conversation with some great questions. Oh, I love your cup, like a boss.
One of my students gave me that.
Pardon me?
One of my students gave me that.
The title that we gave to our conversation today is what is peer support for parents and caregivers, and why it is now more important than ever. So let's start the conversation, Christina.
Sure. So as I was saying, many people do not identify themselves as caregivers who actually are. So in a recent study, I mean 2018, they did an assessment on that and how many people would identify within Canada as a caregiver, and it was only 28%. We know that it's much higher than that, right? So for example, the term caregiver is usually associated with somebody in a medical facility, right? Or a care home or something like that. When really a caregiver is anybody who's supporting somebody with, as we said, an addiction, a mental health illness or challenge, a physical disability, right? So any parent out there, for example, is a caregiver. Could be a mother, a daughter, a father, a son, right? I mean, it's very broad, okay? So I work with caregivers because that's my lived experience with my own children, right? And beyond that. So I believe that peer support for caregivers, which is everything we've already talked about, the definition of, is more important now more than ever because of the world that we live in right now. We are in a global pandemic that seems never ending. And we've been isolated from each other. We've been disconnected from each other in many ways. Students that I work with are disconnected from friends because if they have to go into isolation, this is how we communicate, like you and I are doing right now, right? It's a connection with a disconnection, if you like.
Yes.
So there's more people now, I believe, people that I've spoken with directly. There's more people now more than ever who need that peer support, who need to know they're not alone, that need to know that they're talking with somebody who has walked the walk, right?
And how do you get that set up? Like, how do you start that? How do you get that set up? You're telling me that there's groupings of people and communities that, by nature of what's transpired,
Yeah.
would benefit from something called peer support. And you've mentioned youth, you've mentioned parents and caregivers as being your expertise. So for those who are watching live or are watching the recording, where does one start? Where do you go to seek out this?
You contact me.
Oh, okay.
That's where you start, Robert. You contact me.
Okay, sorry.
No, actually, February 1st, I am starting a free drop-in group. It's gonna be online because it needs to be online. I would prefer to do it in person, but we're not in that situation as of yet. So it'll be online, and it's a free drop-in group for caregivers. And so not the youth piece with this one, but for caregivers. And it's specifically for that, for caregivers to come together in a safe, non-judgmental space. This will be something that I will post on LinkedIn it's going to be on Zoom. That is the platform. I've already done a link, but I'll be posting it a few more times leading up to February 1st. It'll be from 6 until 8 p.m. That's Mountain Time. Okay. And I'll be facilitating it. And it'll be every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday. And I want those who are watching today to know that I'm going to join Christina's group. I am in the role of caregiver for specifically for my mother in Montreal. There's a huge role that I play in supporting her life. She presently lives in a long-term care facility in Montreal. And I'll try to, I'll see what we can do to bring Sharon into it, because she has a huge role to play as a caregiver for her parent, for her mother as well.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah. Tanya would, so good to know. How do people find you? How do people find me?
So my email is perspectiveconsulting@gmail.com.
Can you spell perspective for us?
Yes. PEERS. Are you putting it in the chat, Robert?
You bet.
Please. So PER and then spective, SPECTIVE.
Yep.
Consulting.
Yep.
@gmail.com.
Yep.
Or you can also check out the website. But if you want to contact me directly, use my email. And my website is Perspectives. There's an S in there this time. That was my typo when I put it together. I will own that. So it's perspectivesconsulting.ca.
So Tanya asks, what would a peer group consisting of a parent of a child with MS and a child with a parent with early onset Alzheimer's, would that be a good fit? And would the age difference be an impediment to sharing life experiences?
That's a good question. Tanya, you have awesome questions this morning. Thank you for that. That is a really good question. My recommendation would be, unless the child needs support from the parent, I would have two separate groups. I would have a parent group and I would have a youth group. if you're able to do that. If, like, so for example, if my son was participating in a group, he would need a support worker with him because of he needs support mobility wise, and also he's nonverbal. So he would need support in that. So that would sort of have to be a judgment call on what you would want to achieve in the group, and the comfort zone of the group.
So there'd be some conversations to assess.
Yeah. Yeah. Like with my caregiver group, I specifically have a drop-in group for caregivers.
Yep.
And my hope is that in the relatively near future, I'm also going to have a drop-in group for youth, but they would be separate, because I have found when I have done it together, there's a lot less sharing that happens because of that. What if I share and I hurt my parents' feelings? Or what if I share and it's too much sharing? You know, all of those sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of, I guess, self-reflection things on yourself. You're a little more unsure of what to share. So that would be my recommendation with my experiences. I would have 2 separate groups if possible.
And again, why did you want to draw attention to parents and caregivers during our conversation today? And we have another 5 minutes, so I want to ensure that we hear from you about why we came here today to talk about parents and caregivers.
I guess because in my professional capacity as an educator, I have had many parents that have come to me on a one-to-one basis and want to talk.
Yeah.
And just need and get, when they hear the experience that I have, when I share what I need to share, right, that is relevant for them, there's a connection that happens there, and they're like, oh my God, I don't feel alone now because I just spent even 5 minutes talking to somebody who's been through this, right? And I think with, like I was saying, with the isolation and the disconnect we're seeing, that's harder to do. And now you have right on and off, we've had kids at home who are learning. We've had parents at home at the same time who are working. The dynamic has shifted, and it's, if I don't let my kid do this, then I'm a horrible parent. Well, no, you're not. You're setting up a boundary.
Okay.
Right? So it's all of those pieces that I think are really coming to the forefront right now that need to be addressed.
Okay, so a couple of more minutes. So I'm watching this live today. I'm watching the recording, and I say to myself, I got to reach out to Christina. What can I expect as an outcome or the benefits by reaching out to you and having you introduce me to the business of peer support consulting? But I want to emphasize that it's a business, right? Yeah. I mean, it could come. It could sound
it's a life experience business.
There you wow. We should put that on the banner.
Yeah. It is. It's a life experience business. And if you reach out to me, you can expect that. You can expect empathy. You can expect non-judgment. You can expect somebody who would work with you to help form either just a one-on-one that you want to have regular conversations. But my goal would be to help you, again, that strengths-based, find what's strong as opposed to always looking at what's wrong. I just spent 3 weeks in the hospital with my son, Taylor, because he fell off his horse during therapeutic riding and broke his sacrum. It was horrific. It was not a nice experience. My entire time, 3 solid weeks in the hospital, not one time did anybody ever come in and say, how are you doing? Just to pull one little example out there, right? I would be crying in the hospital room because of feeling so overwhelmed of what I was helping my son deal with. And still, no one said, how are you? What can I do for you? Can I get you a cup of tea? Something as simple as that, right? When I'm doing peer support work, even though I'm the one facilitating and I'm the one that's leading it, I get so much back out of it. That's why I'm passionate about this work, Robert. And that's why I want to help other parents, other caregivers, other youth that are out there that maybe have gone through similar experiences. I have a son with a generalized anxiety disorder and PTSD. So I've dealt with those symptoms. I've dealt with the systems, right? So when you come to me, you can expect somebody who doesn't just have learned experience. And what I mean by that is I didn't read a book and then say, here's what you need to do. Yeah, I've read many books. I can recommend many books. But when you come to me, you're going to be talking with somebody who's lived it, who's talked the talk and walked the walk, and will meet you where you are at.
Before I ask you my last question, thank you, Marilyn. Marilyn Harris has chimed in and she's put in a comment. Thank you, Marilyn. Always great to see the kindness lady out there, the kindness, like driving the message that we all need more kindness. And she's drawing attention to your story. I'm assuming she's drawing attention to your story of being in a hospital around the lack of kindness. And somewhere underneath peer support is the huge value of bringing kindness to somebody's human experience, life experience.
100%. And that's why it's so important that it's strength-based, because that's what we draw on, right? We're kind. We're empathetic, right? No, but nobody's going to walk in my door, Robert, and work with me, and I will never, ever judge them, belittle them. You know, I had to verbally argue with the manager on the unit at the hospital for me to even stay in the room with my son. And my son has cerebral palsy, he's nonverbal. He needs somebody there to voice for him. And they did not want me to stay. And I literally stood in the middle of his hospital room and said, you do what you need to do, because I'm not moving.
Wow. You know, he just didn't know how to play with you. Exactly. Being the expert of play, I said,
you should have called you in, Robert.
Yeah, the three of us, loosen up, guy, play with the situation a little.
Exactly, right?
Christina Henderson, Peer Perspectives Consulting.ca. Chris, just going to scroll back up here. Peer Perspective Consulting at gmail.com.
Yes.
If there's one final message that you'd like to share with anybody, and by the way, you're awesome.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on.
No.
I always love talking with you, Robert. We have fun. It's awesome.
I have learned so much. I'm going to crawl underneath my desk a little bit later on and go, wow, I knew nothing. If there's one or two last messages, nuggets that you'd like to share with the audience, go for it.
All right. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who has come into the conversation today, and the questions you've asked have been awesome. So I appreciate that so much. Final things, peer support we're here, and we want to be there for you. We want to help you. We've lived it, and we're there for you. And we're a place that you can come and feel safe, secure, no judgment, and just like somebody's got you. You know, if you come to see me, I've got your back. I'm there for you. And I will probably be one of the biggest advocates that you've ever had.
And tell us about the February 1st.
Yes, so February 1st, which is a Tuesday, from 6 until 8 p.m., I'm doing a free caregiver drop-in group. And that's whatever that means to you. It could be a caregiver of a child, another loved one, a friend, right? I've spoken with people who are caregivers for their friends, close friends, right? For whatever that looks like. Please come and be part of the conversation. It's going to be every Tuesday. So if you can't make it on February 1st, come to the next one. I will be posting the link again on my Facebook, on LinkedIn. And I would love for as many people to come out and be part of this new community I'm trying to build. I know you're coming to a safe space to share.
Tanya says, Tanya says, thanks so much for this session.
Thank you.
I say thank you so much for this opportunity to reconnect with you. We're going to end the broadcast, and stick around because I have some other questions for you about how how this could fit into the work that I do through powerful play experiences.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
Everybody take action. Reach
Yes.
out to Christina. She's on LinkedIn as well. And have a great day, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, everyone. Sending you love.
Bye.